Welcome to another dojo topic. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever made some kind of change in your life and maybe with your nutrition? You started eating differently and those around you are like, I don't understand. Why don't you eat this anymore? You've made some kind of change in your life, and people that know you really well are not accepting of these changes that you're making. Well, if so, that's probably why you've attracted today's video. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Welcome to the dojo. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you've joined us, and we meet live every Tuesday. If you're able to join us live, please do so. If not, I'm so happy that you are watching this video. And last week, our topic was subtle ways you're still playing small, even after all the inner work. So if you were unable to join us live or you have not yet seen the video, I will put a link to that video at the end of this video. But today we talked about coexisting across frequencies. What does that mean? Well, it's like whenever you make a change in your life, and it's something that you're doing for yourself, that you're loving yourself, you are raising your vibrational frequency. So, what happens when you're in a relationship with someone who knew you prior to raising your vibrational frequency? How do you coexist in that relationship? That's what we talked about today. And any kind of raising of the vibrational frequency is a spiritual awakening. So that's what I'm calling it for today. So, a spiritual awakening, especially one that leads to coexisting across frequencies, is not about becoming more spiritual or better than other people. It's anything that happens that causes you to see yourself as more worthy. It might look like choosing to love yourself where you once abandoned yourself, finding your value after divorce, loss, or betrayal, doing the healing inner work and no longer tolerating what once felt normal, realizing you are powerful where you once felt powerless, trusting yourself instead of outsourcing your worth, no longer needing permission to be who you are. An awakening happens the moment you stop living from what's wrong with me and start living from I'm awesome, I matter, I'm enough, life is fabulous. When you begin to see yourself as worthy, you stop negotiating your truth. You stop shrinking to keep the peace. You stop confusing love with self-sacrifice. And naturally, you may find yourself coexisting with people who are still living from an older version of you. Different frequency, same room. A spiritual awakening is any moment you choose worthiness over survival, power over powerlessness, self-trust over self-abandonment. So have you noticed how your awareness has expanded, but the people you live or work with haven't quite caught up yet? You're kind of like, huh? How can you not see this awesomeness in me? Does there seem to be some confusion around different priorities, different emotional reactions, different vibes? During this dojo session, we dove into what it really means to live with people who are on a different vibrational frequency and how to coexist without shrinking, fixing, rescuing, or spiritually bypassing yourself. We explored why differing frequencies can feel exhausting, triggering, or lonely, how to stay anchored in your awareness without judging or discerning, the subtle ways you may be leaking energy, over explaining, or playing small to keep the peace, practical metaphysical tools to hold your frequency steady in shared spaces, how to choose compassion without self-betrayal. This is about mastering presence, boundaries, and energetic sovereignty so you can love your life as it is while staying true to who you are becoming. But awakening doesn't happen in isolation, does it? It's not like you just go up into the mountains and sit on a rock all by yourself. I mean, yes, people do that, but for the most part, when we have a spiritual awakening, there are other people still involved in our life and people who are maybe not understanding what it is that you are becoming. Most of us awaken inside families, relationships, workplaces, and homes. So, what happens when you're living or working with people who don't share your level of awareness? When awareness expands, you see patterns, you feel energy, you pause instead of react. And then suddenly you notice the gap. You notice the gap in where you are versus some of the people in your life and where they are. And this is not about judgment. This is not about saying, hey, you're not thinking like I'm thinking. This is simply about noticing. It's about awareness. These gaps are different frequencies, and they can show up as emotional reactivity versus regulation, fear versus trust, control versus surrender, unconscious patterns versus awareness. Other people's reactions can feel so confusing, as if they're abandoning you. It's not that they're wrong, it's that you have changed, and change disrupts familiar dynamics. There was a moment when I realized I wasn't broken. I was just living from a version of myself that didn't know her worth yet. At the time, I was going through a divorce from my 32-year marriage, and I started being more aware of when and where I had been giving away my power for those 32 years. As a student, competitor, and teacher in the martial arts, I had been embracing my masculine energy, but that divorce gave me the opportunity to do some more inner work. It became an invitation for my spiritual awakening to embrace my divine feminine energy, choosing myself, finishing the inner work, and learning to say no without guilt. It was an opportunity to be more loving to myself. Friends, coworkers, and family members reacted with confusion, resistance, and comments like, "You've changed. You're not the same anymore. I don't think you really know what you want." Even in the workplace, I was so different because I was no longer that person who was married to that person, that spouse. And so as I was changing, I was also changing within the workplace, and certain people just didn't know what to make of it. They wanted the old version of me, but I was no longer willing or able to play small any longer, to keep squeezing myself into who I was before that. And people just didn't understand because internally I was experiencing more peace, less explaining, a steadier nervous system, even when others didn't understand. I didn't outgrow people because I became spiritual. I outgrew patterns because I finally saw my value. Living across frequencies can activate common triggers such as frustration, guilt, loneliness, superiority or resentment, the urge to fix or teach. But these are spiritual traps, and they can quietly turn into and show up as spiritual superiority, emotional distancing, judging others as low vibe thinkers. You know, that's all judgment, right? Judging others. Yeah, it's not our place to judge ourselves or anyone else. Awareness invites humility, not hierarchy. When you notice the gap, being conscious of awareness versus agreement can help you remain in a powerful state of being, knowing you can understand someone without agreeing with them, without absorbing their energy, without explaining yourself endlessly. We all have our own energetic sovereignty, and your work is not to raise others. Your work is to stabilize your own frequency by being conscious of how masculine and feminine energy differ. One follows presence, the other follows force. Energy leaks happen when you shift into a primal state of being where you over-explain, walk on eggshells, silence yourself, overcompensate just to keep the peace. I love this quote from one of my favorite authors, Dan Millman. To the degree you doubt your worthiness, you tend to sabotage your efforts and undermine your relationships. You are allowed to grow, stay, love, and choose yourself all at the same time. Here's an example of this. Imagine you and your partner or coworker have been listening to the same radio station for years. Same music, same volume, same commentary in the background of your life. Then one day, without trying to, your dial shifts to a different frequency. You're on a different station now. You're not better. You're not right. You're just tuned to a different station. They're still listening to the old one, and to them, it sounds normal, familiar, and true. Now, here's where coexistence can break down. You start yelling over the noise. Don't you hear this new station? Don't you love it? How come you're not getting out of this what I'm getting out of it? And then they get defensive. And they ask you, why are you acting like the old one is wrong? Both of you then feel misunderstood. The truth is, you can sit in the same room with two radios playing different stations as long as neither of you insists that the other needs to turn theirs off. Coexisting across frequencies doesn't mean convincing them to change stations, turning your volume down to keep the peace, or declaring their station as low vibe. It means you stay tuned to what's true for you. You stop translating your station into their language. You allow difference without making it mean disconnection. Awareness doesn't demand agreement. It requires self-trust. Your feminine energy allows you to remain open, receptive, and gentle, while your masculine energy keeps you deeply anchored, self-led, and unwavering. You move softly because your inner structure is solid. Your power is held, not performed. You don't need to speak it. The masculine within you knows it's there, and the feminine trusts it completely. You can hold your presence in any shared space. You don't need to convince. You don't need to correct. You don't need to withdraw. Everything is energy. Be conscious of your masculine and feminine energy to maintain presence and compassion without self-betrayal. Compassion doesn't require self-abandonment, emotional labor, or explaining your evolution. In real life, it looks like this. You respond instead of react. You share when invited, not when triggered. You don't explain your growth to be validated. Your nervous system stays regulated even when theirs isn't. That's energetic sovereignty. When we're on a different vibrational station, the other person often feels left behind, and this can leave them feeling the need to tell us we're being unreasonable or uncaring. So here's a compassionate way to dissolve their yearning for reassurance. First of all, silently to yourself, name what's actually happening. Their reaction isn't about your beliefs. It's about loss of familiarity for them. When you change stations, they don't just lose agreement. They temporarily lose predictability, emotional mirroring, the version of you they knew how to relate to. So their nervous system reaches for reassurance, not logic. Understanding this keeps your heart open. Reassurance doesn't come from explanation. It comes from felt safety. And felt safety is transmitted energetically, not verbally. The more you defend or explain, the more their system feels there must be something wrong. Defensive or avoidant partners don't calm down when they feel analyzed, cornered, or emotionally worked on. They calm down when they feel no pressure, no demand for intimacy, no threat to autonomy. So the work becomes reassurance without pursuing, connecting without collapsing. The thing that's actually triggering them is your growth because it tends to threaten their sense of control, the unspoken rules of the relationship, the role they knew how to play with you. Defensiveness is protection. Avoidance is self-regulation. Seeing this keeps you compassionate. Find a compassionate reframe that works best for you. This is the kind of language that softens their yearning without collapsing you. You could simply say, I know it might feel like I've moved away from you, but I haven't moved away. I've moved inward, and I'm still here with you. That sentence alone can regulate more than a 20-minute explanation. But understand that that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to really even understand what you just said to them. I know there was a person in my life who I said, I can't keep doing this with you. I don't live there anymore. And that person looked at me and said, what the heck does that mean? That person was so upset and saying, that doesn't even make sense. I don't even understand what you mean by that. They wanted confrontation, but I just smiled and turned and walked away because nothing would have gotten better had I stood there and tried to explain what that means. I don't live there anymore because they were on a different vibrational frequency than I was. And when you stay and you try to be confrontational or try to explain, all it does is create tension. And that's not what we want. During conversations, be sure to avoid over-explaining your awakening, justifying your boundaries, trying to prove you're still good, shrinking to ease their discomfort. That teaches their nervous system that pressure works. Here's what reassurance looks like in action. Instead of processing, convincing, clarifying endlessly, you keep your routines. You stay kind and neutral. You don't withdraw affection as punishment. You don't pursue connection when they pull back. Consistency builds trust faster than intimacy can talk. When you stay grounded, kind, and non-defensive, you are modeling safety. And safety is what they're asking for all along. When they escalate, you slow down, lower your voice, relax your body, pause before responding. Your regulated nervous system becomes the reassurance they're looking for. You can stay connected to them without explaining yourself into exhaustion. This is how they learn you're not leaving, you're not chasing, you're not attacking. Safety is restored without explanation. This approach may not make them like your growth, but it will reduce power struggles. It will restore emotional safety and clarify whether the relationship can meet you where you are, because clarity is a form of loving yourself. So, what about those narcissistic relationships? First of all, call it what it is by naming the reality so you stop gaslighting yourself. Narcissistic or emotionally immature people don't seek reassurance. They seek control, supply, or relief from their own discomfort. Your growth destabilizes the hierarchy they relied on. Their pushback is not a request for closeness. It's a demand for you to return to a certain role. Seeing this clearly is not judgment, it's awareness. You cannot soothe what refuses self-reflection. So the goal is not to dissolve their yearning. The goal is to stop feeding the pattern. Protect your nervous system. Stay anchored in truth without escalation. This is where sovereignty becomes love. Reassurance is behavioral consistency, not emotional caretaking. You do not explain your inner work, defend your values, prove your care, debate reality. You do stay calm, stay brief, stay unmoved. Less emotion is more loving because emotionally immature or narcissistic dynamics feed on emotional intensity, over-explaining, defensiveness, guilt. Neutral presence removes the reward. This isn't punishment, it's simply non-participation. Your response can end the cycle when they say, "You've changed, you don't care, you're selfish." You respond once and only once. Remember, you're not here to explain yourself. You can simply say, "I can see why you might see it that way." Full stop. No more talking or trying to explain yourself. You're not agreeing with them. You're simply not being confrontational. And then you change your behavior, not your words. You leave the room, end the call, shift the topic, create space. Boundaries are actions, not speeches. In a narcissistic relationship, this approach may lead to escalation at first, withdrawal, attempts to provoke guilt or fear. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means the dynamic is losing its grip. And here's the deepest truth. Not every relationship can grow with you, but every relationship reveals how deeply you're willing to stay aligned. That is awakened power. That is mastery of self. During these types of conversations, awakened women often ask, is this my nervous system reacting? Or is this a red flag? Is this a real red flag warning? What's going on here? Without clarity, you'll either over-accommodate harmful behavior or abandon relationships prematurely. The following information can help you choose awareness over self-gaslighting. When the nervous system is triggered, it's internal and repairable. These are reactions rooted in your history, not the other person's intent. Some common signs are you feel activated but safe. The other person shows curiosity or care after the conflict. Repair is possible. You can self-regulate with time or support. Examples of this are feeling dismissed, reminds you of childhood invisibility. Raised voices trigger anxiety even if no harm is intended. You fear abandonment during a disagreement. What helps is grounding and regulation, clear communication, time to process, compassion for yourself. Triggering invites healing. Red flags are external and patterned. When you have red flag warnings, this is something that's really calling your attention. These are behaviors that undermine safety, reality, or self-trust. Some common signs are you feel confused, small, or destabilized. The same issue repeats without accountability. Boundaries are punished or mocked. You feel worse after conversations, not better. And some examples of this are gaslighting. Somebody says to you, that never happened. They're trying to talk you out of something that you know to be true. Blame shifting. This is all your fault. Stonewalling or the silent treatment. Guilt tripping when you assert yourself. Escalation when you stay calm. Red flags require boundaries, not processing. So it's important to know the difference, right, between nervous system triggers and red flag warnings. So I put some key differences here. Nervous system trigger happens occasionally. It can be repaired. Your clarity grows. You feel safer over time. But red flag warnings repeats as a pattern. Repair is refused. Your self-trust erodes. You feel smaller over time. You are not here to endure any kind of relationship. You are here to embody awareness with discernment, compassion, and choice. If relationships only flow one way, this isn't growth, it's imbalance. You were never meant to shrink to stay connected. You were never meant to harden to stay softened. This is the mastery. Awareness without superiority. Compassion without self-betrayal. Boundaries without guilt. Presence without persuasion. You don't need to be understood to be aligned. You don't need agreement to belong. You get to hold your frequency, trust your nervous system, discern wisely, and choose consciously. Life is all about choices. And today, you get to choose yourself. You deserve to party like purple and love your life every day. Now, something I want to just add to this, when it comes to these relationships where you're not seeing eye to eye and there's different frequencies, the only way to win a fight is to refuse to show up. Don't be there. If there are too many red flags in your relationship or your physical safety is being threatened and you are looking for help, visit masteringyourbeliefs.com. Click the hotlines and help button located at the bottom of every single page. I've added some questions here. You can pause the video if you're open to doing some reflection for yourself and really seeing where you land on all of this. These questions can be really, really helpful. I'm not going to read them to you. This is for you to do on your own. So, what did you think about all of this? Could you see yourself in any of this? Do you see maybe where you have opportunity to stand in your power more, to be in a more powerful state of being more often? Can you see where you're giving your power away? Hopefully, this really landed on you in a way that's going to expand your thinking about coexisting between frequencies. If you want any kind of support with this work, visit me at masteringyourbeliefs.com. In the meantime, this is Nancy Mueller, the one and only Life Sensei, saying ciao for now.